right now, the reality is the votes are not there. Just 25 senators have indicated they'll vote yes. 20 are opposed to intervention. 55 still undecided. In the House, passage looks even more remote at this moment. 24 members backing the president, 123 opposed, and that includes 23 Democrats and 100 Republicans. 288 House members are still undecided. I'm joined now by three members of the House. Buck McKeon, he is chairman of the House Armed Services Committee. His committee begins hearings on Syria Tuesday. Tennessee Republican Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn, she, like other conservative members, is opposed to intervention, which puts them in alliance with the Congressional Progressive Caucus. One of their members, Massachusetts Democrat Jim McGovern, is here as well. Thank you all for joining us. I want to first talk about some of the things that Dennis had to say. And first to you, Congressman McKeon. Have you seen any intelligence that directly links Assad to this chemical weapons strike, and do you need it?
I've seen what they've shown us, and they have evidence showing the regime has probably the responsibility for the attacks. They haven't linked it directly to Assad, in my estimation. So
it's probably good enough, because it was probably that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and he didn't. So it's probably good enough in this case?
Well, Assad used them almost a year ago, and we didn't get involved then. Probably should have done something sooner. It's a little late, and I'm not sure. You know, 100,000 people have been killed, about 1,400 by chemical weapons, or a few more. It's a tragedy all the way around. It's immoral to be using chemical weapons, obviously, against your own people. By the same token, I'm concerned about the morality of sending our troops into harm's way without providing for the things they need. You know, the president, in the last couple of years, has done the surge in Afghanistan while cutting the military budget, flew missions over Libya while cutting the military budget, changed to a Pacific strategy while cutting the military budget, and now this. We're asking them to do more with less. I think there's a moral responsibility that we have to our troops.
And I want to follow up on that in a bit, but I want to get each of you just to chime in here in our first part about what the Chief of Staff had to say. You had said, I just don't know what the mission is here. Your inclination is to vote no. And we heard Dennis McDonough say, look, here's the mission. We are going to degrade Assad's ability to use chemical weapons and deter him from doing so. That's our mission. Is that good enough?
That is not good enough for me, because every mission should be clearly defined, and then you need the execution of what that strategy is going to be, and then you need to know what that exit strategy is going to be. And I don't see that. And as the chairman said, repeatedly, this president is saying do more with less, even to the point that the day before he starts saying let's go to Syria, he cuts their pay, and they're going to get less than they were expecting. I think that part of the crisis is what is being done to the funding of our military.
And again, I do want to talk about the funding of the military, but I want to ask you, because I know that you intend to vote no at this point on a resolution. Can you look your commander-in-chief, the leader of the Western world, who has come to Congress and said, we need to do this, we have an obligation to do this, and tell him no?
Well, look, I'm a big supporter of President Obama's. I have great admiration for him, and I support him on almost everything. But sometimes friends can disagree.
But this is a big one.
This is a big one, but the point of the matter is this is not a question about party loyalty. This is a question for all of us about what is right. This is a vote of conscience. Is this the most effective thing to do? And I'll just be honest with you. I'm troubled, and this is not just with the administration, but by the international community and the international organizations, that there's this lack of imagination, the inability to think out of the box about what are the alternatives here. We're being told that there's two choices: do nothing or bomb Syria. Clearly, there have to be some other choices in between. We ought to explore them.
Let me ask you, all three of the military, I've got about a minute, so has anybody seen any evidence that somehow the U.S., whatever U.S. servicemen are involved, whatever equipment is involved, will not be funded properly for this particular mission? I mean, there's no evidence of that. I understand that in general you have a concern about the military budget.
All I've heard is that something as important as this, they'll find the money for it.
Sure.
But it has to come from somewhere else. The money's fungible.
Right.
If they're not going to have enough money for the training and equipping of our
And the readiness,
people.
redeployment
But so is
readiness.
it an argument against it to say, well, we don't have the money for it because clearly they'll find the money?
The reality is we'll do, if we decide to go to war in Syria, we'll do in Syria what we've done in Afghanistan and Iraq, and let's borrow the money. We all talk about the debt that we have. Well, a big chunk of the debt is these war costs.
I'm going to ask you, three of you to stand by. We'll be right back. And when we return, saying no to the president and what it means for the United States position in the world. That's up next. I'm back with Congressman Buck McKeon, Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn, and Congressman Jim McGovern. These tapes have come out. Clearly, the administration and supporters on Capitol Hill want people to see these tapes, and they're horrific. These are babies dying, apparently, of a sarin gas attack. Is this something that will move you or your constituents from what you've heard back home?
Candy, you know, in my district, with the major military post, with the nation's largest community of Kurds, we've all seen this. We all agree that what Assad or the rebels have done is horrific. But we also know that to go in and do this in Syria, the military, it's immoral. It is immoral to continue to ask our men and women in the military to go out without the equipment, the training, the readiness, and the funds.
Who said they're going to
this.
get the equipment? Tell me, what about...
Look, these tapes break my heart, and it's awful. There's a terrible humanitarian crisis going on in Syria. A lot of it is perpetrated by Assad. The rebels are responsible for it. There are all these refugee camps. So the issue is not, is this terrible? The issue is, what is effective? What can we do to be helpful? And I don't believe that going in and bombing Syria is going to help those suffering people. I think it's going to increase the suffering, nor is it going to get us closer to a political settlement, which the president says he wants.
I have 31 grandchildren. Seeing pictures of those children lying there dead is heartrending. There's no question about that. But we still have the basic problem of asking the military to do more with less. The other day after the meeting at the White House, the president came up to me and said, I know how concerned you are about sequestration, so am I. So I asked Friday for a meeting with the president. I'm waiting to hear back from the White House. I want to sit down and talk to him about this. I cannot guarantee that we can get votes for it, but I know that a lot of people have the same concerns that I do, and if we can fix this, it may help some people in their vote.
Still, it seems, and all of you have expressed this concern, but it seems like there is one issue and then there is the other. Are you willing to vote against the president if he won't agree to somehow rejuvenate the military by dealing with the budget cuts?
And Candy, it's leadership. It is a lack of leadership on the president's part. In my district, Friday, 1,020 contacts into our district. Only 3 were for action in Syria. The president has not made his case. He has not defined the mission, and there is not the support from the American people.
Could he make his case for the 3 of you? Could he make his, is there something he could say?
To me, this is not about rejuvenating the military. I want to fix sequestration, too. I mean, the point is whether or not what he's proposing is the right thing to do, whether it's the effective thing to do. And I just don't believe that's the case. You know, there have to be other alternatives out there.
And the long-term ramifications of something.
I don't look at it as a vote against the president. I look at it as a vote for our men and women in uniform who keep being asked to do more with less.
And if I could just say, if I were the president, I would withdraw my request for the authorization at this particular point. I don't believe the support is there in Congress. I think people view war as a last resort, and I don't think people think that we're at that point. You know, I would step back a little bit. We have some other issues we've got to deal with in Congress, domestic and international. But I think at this point, if I were asking me for my advice, I'd say withdraw the authorization at this point.
The uncertainty, the hesitancy has not served them well.
So really quickly, is there anything the president could say that would convince you to say yes on this, other than on the defense budget?
Fix sequestration.
Sequester.
Yeah, he has to convince me that this was effective and this was the right thing to do. I'm not there.
Can't be convinced. All right. Thank you all so very much. I appreciate your being here. When we return, new alliances form on Capitol Hill as liberal Democrats and conservative Republicans find common ground in opposing military strikes in Syria. Our political panel is next.